Hello, my name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be answering a bunch of gardening questions. So my sister-in-law had a garden for the very first time this year, and throughout the summer she sent me all these questions and I just saved them, and now I am going to answer them. A lot of them I think are questions that a lot of brand new gardeners would ask, and so I thought, hey, this could be a cool video. Yeah, I've got a sweet setup today. I've got my cat. I've got a bowl of chocolate chips because I'm normally keto, but at the time of filming this video, my husband is away on a man trip, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be keto while he's away because I don't care. So, So the first question is, how often should I water my garden? She said, especially with this heat. We had a lot of heat waves this year, and so a lot of water was used. Let's just say that. So the answer to this question really depends. I grow in raised beds, and she has an in-ground garden. And so I told her a couple times a week, and then if it's really, really hot, maybe every day. The biggest thing is to water either first thing in the morning or later in the evening, not during the heat of the day, because you could scorch your plants. When in doubt, if you really don't know if you should water or not, just stick your finger right in the soil, like try to get as deep as you can, and just check if it's moist or not. If it's bone dry, then you obviously need to water. The very top inch of soil, it doesn't really tell you because it dries out very quickly. The next question she asked is where to plant the flowers. So I went out with my brother to the garden center and we got a bunch of stuff for their garden. It was mostly vegetables, but then I bought some flowers for them as well. And he's like, why do I need flowers? And the answer is, well, many reasons. It's really beneficial to plant flowers with your vegetables. There's something called companion planting. If you haven't heard of this, I really suggest you look it up. Different flowers can help to deter certain insects. They also attract pollinators, which you need pollinators if you want to get fruit from your vegetable plants, unless it's something like lettuce or broccoli where you're actually eating the plant, then you don't need pollinators. But things like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, all those types of things, they all need pollinators in order to grow. The answer to the question really depends on what flowers you have. If it's strictly for pollinators, then it can basically go anywhere. You don't even have to have them like with your vegetables. You could have them on one side of the garden, whatever you want. But other plants like marigolds, which are great deterrents to a lot of pests, it's great to have them right in and around your vegetables. So really you need to look up what flowers you have and what vegetable plants you have, because that will all depend. But for the most part, right in and around your vegetables, you do not need to have like a separate place for your flowers. The next question she sent is, do I plant onions in the fall? Now, onions have confused me a lot. So I was under the impression that you could plant them in the fall, and maybe you can plant them in the fall. They are called a biannual, and what that means is that the plant can go into like a dormancy phase, and then after it's gone through that dormancy phase, it will go to seed when it grows. So the answer, I think, is no, but you could if you really wanted to. Some people will plant their onions in the fall to give them a head start in the spring. But if you start your onions inside really early, then you can just transplant them in the spring and then harvest them later in the year. From what I understand, if you plant them in the fall and let them grow a bit and then go dormant for the winter and then continue to grow in the spring, they won't get as big as if you start them in, say, like January or February inside, transplant them out and let them grow all year. And that is exactly why a lot of gardeners discourage newer gardeners from buying sets of onions. If you want really big onions, especially from big box stores, you can sometimes, what happens is they start the onions quite a bit earlier, let them go dormant, and then kick back up in the spring for when they sell it to you guys, because then the sets look bigger and look fuller. But in truth, that plant, because it has had a dormancy, is going to be focusing on seed production instead of bulb production. And so unless it's like a local nursery where you know that they started it in January, it's better to do it yourself. And starting onions from seed is really easy. I've done it a few times now. Okay, the next question, she attached a picture of her carrots, and she said, when is it time to pull the carrots out? So root vegetables are always fun because you don't really know what you've got until you pull it out of the ground. Now, if you direct sow seed carrot, which is what I would recommend, I've tried growing carrots from transplants before. It's really hard to separate them from the other carrots in that cell pack without breaking them. And so I really would more encourage to sow your own seed and then thin them out as needed. So if you start it from seed yourself, you should have on the seed packet a general idea of how many days until maturity. If it says, like, I'm just throwing out a random number, so let's say 60 days, then you can say, okay, I planted it on this day, and then in 60 days, I'm gonna pull one out, see how it looks, and if it looks good, then I'll pull out more. And if not, you've only lost one carrot and can let the rest continue to grow. The other thing you can do is you can like move the dirt away from like the tops of the carrot, and so you can kind of see the size of the shoulders, and that usually gives you a pretty good idea of how big they are. But you know, you always have there's always one that has really big shoulders and you're like, this thing's gonna be huge, and you pull it out and it's only like this long. But yeah, it's fun. Root vegetables, it's a mystery. So she texted me one morning and she said, do you think I should water my garden this morning? The soil doesn't look dry from yesterday's rain, so I don't want to give it too much water. And the answer is no, you don't have to water. Unless it's going to be like a scorcher of a day and it's just a little bit, like just a little damp, then maybe water. I should say this is all generalized. Some plants like to really dry out before you water them, and others need to constantly be moist. So you really need to know the specific plants that you're growing and what their water needs are in order to have the best production. But in general, if the soil still has quite a bit of moisture from the day before, you probably don't need to water it. Now, you might want to come back and check later in the day, maybe around dinner time, just to make sure it hasn't completely dried out. But even then, you probably will be fine. So now we have a couple questions that are specific to pests. It was kind of funny. So my sister-in-law only lives less than 5 minutes from us. They live so close, just down the road. But we found throughout the whole summer, I would get some pests, and about 2 weeks later, they would get them. So it seems like it took everything was moving west, and the pests were moving west, and it took them about 2 weeks to get to the other side of town. So I had gotten Japanese beetles, and I sent her a picture and said, just FYI, these are Japanese beetles. This is what they do. Be on the lookout. This is what I'm doing to try and control them. And so she texts me, she goes, Sarah, I just found like 10 Japanese beetles in my garden. What do I do? And I said, don't squish them. And she's like, don't squish them. Yes, do not squish them. If you see Japanese beetles, and here's a picture of what they look like, do not squish them, because when you squish them, it releases like a pheromone or something, and it actually attracts more Japanese beetles to your garden. So I just kept a bucket of soapy water, and in the morning, you go out and you can literally just like hold the bucket underneath the leaf they're on and just like tap it, and they should fall right out into the bucket. I like to say that Japanese beetles are not morning people. In the morning, they're a lot easier to just like tap off of the leaf and you don't even have to touch them. But in the evening, if you wait, you have to grab a pair of gloves and like grab them and throw them into the bucket, because they will hold on to the plant. So I highly suggest doing it in the morning. The earlier, the better. You can also do things like spray down the leaves with a mixture of water, neem oil, and Murphy's oil soap. The soap is really important. Oil and water separates, right? So you're always having to shake it, whereas the soap kind of allows the water and the oil to mix together a little bit better, and it just sprays around nicer. So that's my suggestion. I prefer using Murphy's oil soap because it's like 98% natural. It's natural enough that if you spray a plant that has fruit on it and you eat the fruit without washing it, you are not putting yourself, you're not going to be harmed in any way. That was really important to me because I live next door to my 18-month-old nephew who very regularly goes into the garden and eats stuff right off the plants, and so I just was very careful to not put anything on the plants that could be toxic in any way. So the other pest that we dealt with a lot this year is cucumber beetles. If you've been on my channel at all, if you've watched any of my garden tours from this summer, you will know I had quite the battle this year with cucumber beetles. So she texted me and asked if she could order ladybugs to help deal with the cucumber beetles because ladybugs are like a predator in the garden. The answer to that is actually no. Ladybugs eat aphids. So if you have aphids and you want to order ladybugs, it could help. They could also just fly away and not eat your aphids, but they definitely won't do anything with cucumber beetles. If you're going to order like some sort of an insect to deal with your cucumber beetles, my suggestion is to order beneficial nematodes. And if you can get beneficial nematodes that are specific to your area, that's even better because then you're not introducing new species to your area that don't need to be there. I would like put a link below of where you can get nematodes, but I ordered it from a very small company in Canada so that I knew that the nematodes I was getting were safe to use in my area. So the cucumber beetles will lay their eggs in your soil and they will eat those larvae, and then hopefully you won't get as many coming back because the cucumber beetles will come in waves like as they die and new ones come up. I treated my soil at the end of the season and then I will treat it again in the spring with nematodes. So if you're going to get an insect to help you with cucumber beetles, my suggestion is nematodes. Her next question was, do you get annoyed at all my gardening questions? To which I said, absolutely not. I love answering her gardening questions because it makes me feel like I know something about gardening and I feel special. So thank you, Katie, for always asking me your gardening questions. So this question is, I didn't water my garden this morning because it's supposed to rain today. At what point do you water it if it doesn't rain, or should I just wait until tomorrow morning? I think it's supposed to rain tomorrow too. And so my answer was, if it doesn't rain for the whole day, I would just play it kind of by ear. If my plants look fine and it's supposed to rain again the next day, I will wait till the next day. A little bit of stress is not bad for your plants. If anything, it makes them stronger. Some argue it makes the fruit more tasty. I would give it a full 24 hours. So if you wake up the next day and it didn't rain, then water. If it's supposed to rain again, water in the evening if it doesn't. Okay, my baby's waking up, so I've got to wrap this up, but luckily we only have one question left. So the last question is, my kale hasn't been doing so great. Some bugs are having some hearty meals, but I don't think I've seen any bugs on them. They just keep getting eaten when I'm not around. When this sort of thing happens, kale is actually part of the Brassica family, so similar to broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. All these plants kind of deal with the same pests. When I notice that plants like that have a lot of chunks taken out of them and I never see the creature, two possibilities that quickly come to my mind. The first one is slugs, because the slugs come out in the night when you're asleep. So it could be slugs. And apparently you can like crush up eggshells and put it around the base, like not like finely milled, just like crack them so that they're spiky and stuff. And that should deter them from crawling up your plants. If you've tried that and it's worked for you, let me know. I do have a friend who lives in Port Hope and she says it works great for her. I tried it on my plants and I think they were eaten enough that it was hard to tell if it was working or not because they had so many holes in them before I put the eggs down. So it could be slugs. You can also just wait until after dark and go out with a flashlight, see if there's slugs there, or go early in the morning before it gets too bright and see if there's slugs. The other option that it could be are cabbage worms or cabbage moth worms. They're these little green caterpillars. I'll put a picture up of what they look like. And oof, they are so terrible because they will decimate a plant. They work so fast and they're really hard to see. Like a green cabbage, that's the color they are. And they start off teensy tiny and eventually they get quite large. I will literally, when I'm expecting them to start showing up or I'm starting to see some damage, I will go over every single leaf. I start with leaves I see damage on and then I move to other ones. And I'll look at the top, but they're usually on the bottom side, so I look at both sides. I really look along like the spine of the leaf because that's usually where they're hanging out, or they're hanging out like right in like the armpits of where the leaf attaches to the stem, or if it's something like a heading, like cabbage or broccoli, right in where that head is going to grow, where it's really dense with leaves, they're often hiding in there. And it's honestly just like looking through, being really diligent to look closely and do it slowly and pick them off and do what you want with them. If you have chickens, chickens love to eat them. If you don't have chickens, you can throw them in a bucket of water. Some people don't like killing them, and that's your own prerogative, but the thing is, if you don't kill them, they will become more cabbage moths, which will create more cabbage worms. So do what you will. So yeah, that's all my answers to Katie's questions. If you're a new gardener, I hope this was helpful to you. If you found any of these answers helpful, please comment below and let me know. And if you have other answers to these questions, things, because I have a lot of people who've been gardening a lot longer than me who follow my channel, if you have any other answers to this question and additional knowledge or things that you have learned in your growing experience, leave that below too, so that if someone comes across this video looking for answers to some other questions, they can go in the comments and get a wealth of knowledge there as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!